When I went to the Capitol this week, I ran into one of our representatives in the House, a Republican, and he asked me what I was doing, and I said, oh, I'm working on that heroin bill. And he said, well, I have one of my own in the House. Can you tell us what those bills are in the House? I didn't have time to look them up.
That's that building on the other side?
Yeah. I said, oh yeah, I think Dan's doing 99, and I think he told me he was doing 10.
Oh, goodness.
So
The
that
bill
means
is 20. 20.
he's doing it for 20 years. So if that means that you get 20
No,
years.
it's a mandatory minimum, 21 years.
Mandatory, yeah, mandatory minimum 20.
You must get 20 years.
There's about 6 heroin bills, so if you do the legislative search and put
Yeah.
heroin in, you'll get those 6 of them pop up.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big believer in a mandatory minimum, in that if you elect a judge, he ought to be able to figure out what's the proper.
I agree with Dan. The problem is Orleans Parish, for the most part. That poor DA is just struggling where the judges that he has, he cannot count on a judge to put someone who's a badass in jail. So he needs mandatory minimums where that judge's hand is tied. So when he convicts that heroin dealer, he knows he's going to get 20 years. He wants that bill real bad. He would be for Dan's bill if he had different judges. I'm good with Dan's bill because I know for the most part the judges are going to do the right thing. We may have to fight on some of them. But I know in Baton Rouge I'm going to be okay. But that poor guy down there, he needs to tie some hands. But it's not really good all across the state because it's different jurisdictions, and so the law doesn't work the same all the way around.
And when he comes and says that in committee, I'm going to say, well, probably your dealer has done an offense before, and you can multiple bill him and take care of it that way.
Well,
but anyway, we're having a
Is
little
it
dialogue
true?
here.
Is it true when you give someone 99-year sentence or a big sentence and they get out 20 years before, is it because of plea bargaining and good time or something?
Good time.
Good
It's
time?
good time. But on crimes of violence, good time is 85%.
Okay, well
So-
that's a help.
So on regular run-of-the-mill crimes, it's a third, good time. But if you're a second offender, it moves from 33 to 50. If you're a third offender, it goes to 75%. So Florida, Texas, California, if you get life in prison, you're going to get out in 20 years. So they're
That
different
doesn't make any
than,
sense.
way different than we are.
But in Louisiana, you get a life sentence, you're doing life.
Life is life here.
But and I'm not making an argument against good time as far as the prison needs some tool to control the inmates, and that's how they control them. And otherwise, it would be mayhem all the time.
So
How many prisoners get out of jail because of good time? I mean,
Every prisoner gets out for good time with the exception of life in prison. Everyone by law is
aren't you
required.
expected, but rather than giving them time off for being good, why don't we not add time for being bad?
That's a choice that's been made a long
You got
time
life,
ago.
what else can they do, Norman?
Well, they isolate you somewhere, but
Life is the best prison there.
One of the things that I think that keeps a lot of people from thinking much of it as law is the fact that they see this happen. You look, you rape a 2-year-old girl, you get 6 months probation, all this kind of stuff. I think people are demanding that if you commit a crime, you do the time. And the time means whatever time. You know, why do you take 12 people and give them 2 weeks to sit on a jury and they come up with a sentence and then the judge has the right to turn it however he thinks is fair?
Well, the juries do not determine sentences.
Yeah, well, I know, but
Except for
when they think
life.
a life sentence, they think it's going to be
Yeah.
life.
And
I want
it
to
is
make
life.
a statement besides that.
Yeah.
Look, I want y'all to know how much I appreciate what y'all do. I know how tough it is on what y'all are doing. I know I sleep better at night in Baton Rouge because of these guys like you, Sid Gotro, and those things. I don't think a lot of people realize how tough it is out in those streets in Baton Rouge right now. And if it wasn't for the good law enforcement that we have, everybody would be packing, I can tell you right now.
If you all had the chance, get the chance to go to some high schools and some grammar schools in Baton Rouge, or walk or drive through some streets, drive through some, you're going to see some really bad stuff. And just schools. I mean, to me, that's where the money has to be. Behavior in schools, lack of respect in schools, drugs, violence is bad. We need it. And schools in Baton Rouge are a significant issue in my opinion. And that's why we have some friends over here that want to change cities and new things, we have problems with kids in school.
How about the college
Surely we got good
campuses?
kids.
College
What?
campuses.
College, but, LSU now, we have issues, but not like in these schools where I say.
Is it fair to say that the heroin problem, though, is not just affecting one demographic? I mean, you're talking about army kids that are,
Sure,
You can't pick them.
no, sure.
So this is affecting people with money. I mean,
More than no one.
you have people with money at their disposal and they're choosing heroin, which seems an impure drug, something that's
It's
just,
cheap.
it's cheap, but, when they can have access to, I mean, I hate to say this, you have all this money, you have access to a pure form of
Sure.
drug, and you're going for heroin. What is it about heroin that's so appealing?
But part of what you're saying is absolutely correct, and Ms. Welch could help us with this. They have tightened up the noose on being able to get Oxycontin and all this other stuff, and they're prescribing these super heavy opiates for chronic pain, and then they say, well, you're okay, and they're hooked on it, and they can't get the Oxycontin anymore.
But
And-
addiction knows no socioeconomic.
No, it doesn't. No, I'm
strata.
I'm just talking about a starting
But
place that you see them.
I'm just saying, someone like Hoffman, an actor who has millions and millions of dollars, and he can find someone to get him a pure drug, but he dies on a bathroom floor shooting with heroin, which, generally speaking, you think of a lower socioeconomic drug.
But you're thinking,
And-
you're trying to think logically.
I know.
I think that is not logical.
But
You're
I know
talking-
when you're talking about an addict, it's not logic, but I'm just saying, what is it about heroin?
It's very addictive.
That's you're talking about the neurochemical addiction that a person with an addictive disorder has, which is more powerful than we can understand.
I mean, is it like, it's just an
It's
instantaneous
actually
quick
One
high?
time.
Immediately addicted.
And I personally think that some of it sounds crazy for me to say this, but I think some of it is this fascination with the 60s with some of the kids where they have some. I didn't think as a grown-up when I was a kid. When I was 18, 19, 20. It took a while before I got to this serious state that I'm in all the time.
I can attest to that.
I can test that too.
No more questions on that.
We grew up across the street from each other.
Any other questions about anything? You can
What
answer.
can we do?
Yeah, what can we do?
I got one, I'm sorry for jumping, where Hillar was talking about education. Right up the street from where I live is Magnolia Woods. And I go there and I visit with those kids from time to time. And there's always some person older than me going up and down the hall with a youngster. And what it is it's the volunteers in public schools. And they read with these kids, and it's just a little thing that you can do on your own as far as being one of these role models where one of these kids is seeing that somebody cares about them, cares enough about them to come down there and read. Where I don't think you would come to that conclusion on your own if you hadn't seen that, but that's not getting out there working in the dope world. That's starting with these children where they see that there's somebody that cares about them and that's going to help them with their education. That's an idea for me.
I think both, first of all, you have to elect the people that are going to really work and not say, you're not paying me enough to do this job. If you don't want the job because of pay, then just don't take it. So you really have to figure out who's good and who's not and how you do that. You really have to get engaged to do that. It's difficult to do. So you can't elect a phony. Second, mentors are one of the biggest things that you can do. Boys Club, Girls Club. Junior League is really doing a lot right now. What's the other one you just mentioned? Volunteers in public school, reading these kids. These kids have no one to look up to. And becoming a mentor with some of these kids, 24 hours a day, giving them a cell phone number can be dangerous for some folks. So you have to really be careful of where you are. But just being in the school, let them know that you care for them. And somebody that doesn't look like them, doesn't smell like them, really cares for them is a big deal to them. And so just those two things I think are significant.
I'll add last thing, obviously, hopefully you've learned something from us talking about this tonight. Share that with other people, okay? There's a mom and dad out there right now who might have a child that's hooked with heroin and they have no clue, okay? They don't know that a kid's doing it. It may cause a conversation to happen between that parent and that child, and you may just save a life just by letting them know, hey, the other night I was listening to these folks talk about heroin, and this is what I learned, and this is what's going on in our community. So share it with everybody you know, and we can try to educate a lot of people, because I can only surveil so much, right? There's a whole pocket of people out there that are on heroin right now that I don't see.
Can you tell us
because
how
of
people act when you're on heroin? Do they walk around? Do they talk? Or
They
what
can,
about-
but usually heroin is a depressant, okay? So you're gonna see all the signs you would see with anybody that had any kind of depression, okay? And in its extreme form, it depresses you to death. But essentially, you're talking about a person who is sad and they're solemn. In the mental health work I do, I often see folks that are heroin addicts, and we got to them, thank goodness. They're in a mental institution for their addiction. And they're very depressed, they're suicidal, of course a lot of them say, I'm so sad about my problem, and I don't understand it, and it's overwhelming me, the addiction, that I'm going to shoot too much heroin and die, and we call that passive suicidal ideation. They don't want to die, they really don't, they just know that they can't control this other thing, and it's going to kill them.
Young people, if you could give them some purpose in life. I grew up on a farm, and we always had many jobs to do, and we never thought about getting into drugs.
They weren't all around.
Parents, and the 4-H club,
Oh, they were?
and things like that. Those kids need all that. But
I've walked with two mamas and grandmothers that have lost kids who have come out of the court program. And the problem was, once they came out, they're so vulnerable once they come out of there. If they had businessmen mentors or just men to walk alongside and just model good citizenship and how to work and that kind of thing, I think that would make a real big difference with them.
I agree, organizing that and finding those folks to donate that or
Yeah, but I'm just thinking all the men here. You may have 2 or 3 hours a week that you could just, come along with this approach and say who's coming out of the court program and who needs a little help.
I do a little criminal defense work, and I see these kids in my office, not now, but I used to, and I'd get their parents in, and I would tell them you have 3 choices: sober, dead, jail. And I can't make the choice for you. It's sober, dead, or jail. And a lot pick dead, a lot pick jail, a lot pick sober, and I think it breaks out in about those numbers, about a third, a third, a third. We're not going to be able to save everybody. I wish we could, but you keep throwing them a rope, and you keep throwing them a rope. That's good, but I see a lot of parents going on wading into the river trying to save them, and they lose everything. And so it's just like trying to save a drowning person. You can't let them drown you as well.
Gentlemen, with marijuana being in the
Legalizing it?
yeah, legalizing it and many states adopting it as legal, I think there was rumor that Louisiana may bring that up in the legislature. How do you feel about that possibility? Because I know that the marijuana that's on the street today is not the marijuana of the 60s.
And how do you know that?
What was that? You're
Well,
great
just
at
like the
viewing.
heroin's not.
Just a brief part on it, these other guys certainly can comment. Medical marijuana is legal in Louisiana. The Department of Health and Hospitals was directed 20 years ago to promulgate the rules on how it was going to happen. They've just been busy for the last 20 years, and they haven't gotten around to promulgating the rules. You've seen Dalton Honore talking about bringing his marijuana bill, but I believe that it didn't make it out of committee today. Is that right?
I think he voted to amend it, but
Yeah, I don't I don't see that happening in Louisiana, and I don't see it happening in a lot of other states as far as making it on the same level as a traffic ticket, decriminalizing. I don't see that happening here, and that I think most states are standing back and watching the experiment in Colorado and see how that turns out, and that we need a little bit more evidence on what's going on. I personally believe marijuana is a gateway drug. I'm not for the legalization of it.
I do too. I think it's a big
Well,
problem.
I've had to deal with some cases that actually relate to marijuana death. And I'll tell you, I think the thing that we have to be wary of as a state and as a community is we have to tackle what would be considered, like we do with alcohol, what is considered impairment when you're on marijuana. If you're going to go down the road that we're talking about, the first thing you have to do is you have to talk about impairment, okay? Because if you don't address that first, then what ends up happening is everybody is on marijuana or driving a car and they kill somebody, and then you say, well, Hillar, were they impaired? I have no idea, because we didn't address impairment first. And I bet if you watch what happens in Colorado and Washington State, what's going to happen is something bad's going to happen, and they're going to say we never addressed impairment. Just so you know from our research, impairment by marijuana, completely different than impairment by alcohol, the way you test for it. It's totally different, okay? So it brings up a whole nother litany of things. So if the legislature came to me and said, what do you think, Doc? I'm going to say, address impairment first, okay? Before you even consider talking about marijuana, you got to address impairment.
Well, why is marijuana being treated then? Why don't we just declare it the drug that it is and let physicians prescribe it? I mean, they prescribe hydrocodone and everything else. Why couldn't it just fall in to where you had a physician that prescribed it and then he prescribed the doses you had? If you overdo hydrocodone, you're in trouble.
Sure.
So it'd be the same thing with marijuana. You wouldn't have to. Right. You wouldn't have to set standards or anything.
It's not working out well with hydrocodone now because it's
But it's no use to create a lot of extra problems that are going to be with it. You still be in the same place you are.
That's because of the schedule, right?
Yeah,
Put it on the
Schedule
feds
one.
put it on a schedule that says it has absolutely no
No
medicinal value.
I'm against it as well. I don't think we should pass that. I think we should look at Colorado and see what's going on with the younger kids, because they're now being more addicted to marijuana, being treated more for marijuana since they became legalized. You also have a black market now for marijuana there, right outside the shops that are selling it legal because it's so expensive. It's an issue.
And we shouldn't lose our way just to make a couple of bucks in taxes.
Really?
Yeah, exactly.
Appreciate that.
Y'all got enough of ours already.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
I want to know what we can do to help as far as bill passage is concerned. What would you like us to do?
Well, for me, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to name my bill number right off the bat. I forgot it. But 87. And it's going to be in Jude C next week. And so you can send an email to your legislator, or you can look at the Senate Jude C committee and say, pick one, and send them an email and say, I think Senator Claitor's bill is a mighty fine one.
You're our representative, so consider it going.
And let them know. But Hillar and Dr. Clark have told me long before today that they're willing to help. And so it helps to have officials show up, but me, frankly, no offense to them, when I'm sitting on a committee and I see a citizen's taking the time to come down, I'm impressed by that. So if you got time to come down and testify on its behalf or put a card in, I'd really appreciate it. Doesn't mean that I'm not impressed by what they have to say, but I expect them down. And I'm always impressed when a citizen shows up.
You give them a T-shirt if they come?
I send them to a crawfish boil that happens on Good Friday. Saturday. All right. So.
I will get an email out to everybody with instructions and have the bill number and
We can
everything.
send you the bill numbers for all if you want us to.
I will.
What's your district? How far does it go?
It's District 16 and basically comes from Shenandoah, the country club, down Highland Road, Perkins,
That's mine.
and it comes over here. That's my district as it's presently drawn, but I'm hoping to draw my district a little bit bigger into Congress, where I'm running for Bill Cassidy's spot. I was waiting for my setup.
Good.
Anybody else have a question? Well, we thank you so very much for coming and sharing with us. I feel that everybody's a little more enlightened, and we probably all have ideas of what we will be able to do as individuals and as a group. So we thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Can I do an ad? Can I do an ad
Yes.
before y'all get up? We're trying to build just organization, and next month, we have the large room, and all of that's May 1st, Thursday, May 1st, we'll be sending y'all an email. But we need about 100 people. So I would like for y'all, when you get our messages, to send it, that we want to be having educational things at night. There are a lot of things during the day, but we need to have things, and I think all of 13 of your friends are going to be coming next May 1st. So we're going to be meeting all of the people running for, with Dan, but.
12 of them are my friends.
We're going to get a speaker from New Orleans. Yeah, we're going to get a speaker, and she lived in Cuba, and she's very, she's very passionate. Miss Chevalier, Gisela is what we call her. And also, Gina Terrahana is going to be singing. So it's going to be a nice evening. So please support us and spread the word. She's wonderful.
And come.
Thank you.
Hey, Ms. Orr.